4 MVPs, a signature shoe, one of the most dominant players in the history of women's basketball. And she just posted 4 words on social media that stopped the entire WNBA world cold. Why did everyone forget about my shoe? That's A'ja Wilson, 4-time MVP, the most decorated player in the WNBA right now. And she is not asking that question quietly. She is not sliding it into an interview between other talking points. She posted it, put it out there, let the world see exactly how she feels. Nike is plastering Caitlin Clark on every surface they own. Accelerating the release of Clark's signature Wilson's line quietly moved to the discount racks. While A'ja Wilson's signature shoe sits on clearance racks at major retailers, marked down, moved aside, quietly forgotten, Nike is going all in on Caitlin Clark. Every billboard, every campaign, every cultural moment, one player is being elevated, one player is being sidelined, and the contrast could not be more visible. When Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year, Wilson publicly complained it boiled her blood. This is not the first time. This is not a random moment of frustration. There is a pattern here, a documented, public, undeniable pattern of tension between A'ja Wilson and the rising star who is eating up the spotlight she thought was hers. And now, Nike has made its choice. Loudly, visibly, without apology. Social media is buzzing. The basketball world is divided. And what started as a rumor about a shoe deal has exposed something much bigger, a fundamental shift in the power structure of the WNBA. Who controls the narrative? Who owns the spotlight? And what happens when the most accomplished player in the league realizes the brand she trusted is moving on without her? Stay with me, because this story is deeper than a clearance rack, and it is more important than a sneaker drop. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the post. Why did everyone forget about my shoe? On the surface, it reads like frustration, a quick venting moment, maybe something posted in a heated second that she might have thought twice about. But when you put it in context, when you look at what was happening in the Nike universe at the exact moment those words went live, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a statement, a challenge, a very public acknowledgement that A'ja Wilson sees exactly what Nike is doing, knows exactly what it means, and is not going to sit quietly while it happens. Think about what it takes for a 4-time MVP to post something like that. Think about the professional calculus involved. Wilson has spent years building her brand, building her relationship with Nike, building the credibility that earned her a signature shoe in the first place. Signature shoes are not handed out casually. They are a declaration from a brand. You are important enough to us that we are putting our name on yours. So when you have that, and when you watch that declaration get quietly walked back, when you watch the marketing dollars redirect, when you watch the promotional energy shift, when you watch your shoe move from featured display to discount bin, and then you watch the player who is receiving all of that energy get bigger and bigger campaigns while yours fades, that is not just a business disappointment. That is a personal one. A'ja Wilson let the world know she felt it. A'ja Wilson posted, "Why did everyone forget about my shoe? The A1 has been on shelves for months and it still hasn't sold out. Full price 1 week, and then suddenly marked down. Months on shelves, full price to marked down. That is the retail reality of the A1 right now. And in the sneaker world, in the athlete endorsement world, in the brand relationship world, that reality carries a message. Brands read those numbers in real time. They know exactly what is moving and what is not. And when a signature shoe is sitting in clearance, the conversation inside the boardroom changes. Wilson knew that. She posted anyway. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to pretend you don't see what is happening. To understand what Nike did and why they did it, you have to understand what Caitlin Clark represents from a business perspective, not a basketball perspective, a business perspective. Because at this level, shoe deals are not about the game, they are about the market. And the market around Caitlin Clark is unlike anything women's basketball has ever produced. Start with the numbers, because the numbers are staggering. Clark's arrival in the WNBA did not just boost Indiana Fever attendance, it reshaped the entire league's viewership profile. Games featuring Clark were pulling ratings that had not been seen in years. National broadcasts were selling out advertising inventory. Arenas that had been half full for years were suddenly packed, loud, and energized in a way that television cameras captured and networks noticed. That kind of cultural moment, a genuine, organic, unstoppable groundswell of public attention, is exactly what brands spend billions trying to manufacture. Nike did not manufacture this. It happened. And Nike was smart enough to recognize it and position themselves to own it. The Caitlin 1 is not just a basketball shoe, it is a cultural artifact. It is the physical embodiment of a moment in women's sports that people will talk about for decades. Promotional weight behind something like that, they are not just selling footwear. They are selling a piece of history. They are telling consumers, if you want to be connected to this moment, this is how you do it. Look at the detail in that shoe. Look at what Clark demanded and what Nike delivered. Custom performance technology she personally approved. Easter eggs printed into the outsole celebrating her playing style. This is not a shoe that got handed down from a men's line with a different colorway. This is a shoe built from the ground up around one specific player's identity, game, and legacy. That level of investment, that level of collaborative, creative energy tells you everything about where Nike's priorities are. They are not just putting Clark's name on a shoe. They are building a world around her, and that world is generating the kind of pre-release demand and organic adoption that Wilson's A1 simply has not matched. The numbers drove the decision. Nike followed the data, and the data pointed with absolute clarity straight to Caitlin Clark. Now let's talk about the other side of this story. Let's talk about the A1 and what its trajectory actually reveals about the business of athlete endorsements in 2025. A'ja Wilson is, by any objective measure, one of the greatest players in WNBA history. Her on-court resume is extraordinary. 4 MVPs, championships, international success, the kind of consistent, dominant performance that defines a generation of play. If you are building a case for the greatest WNBA player of all time, Wilson belongs at the top of that conversation. And yet, the A1 is in clearance. How does that happen? How does a shoe attached to a player of that magnitude end up discounted on shelves, while a rookie's signature model generates hysteria before it even officially drops? The answer is uncomfortable, but important. In the sneaker market, on-court excellence is necessary, but not sufficient. What moves product is not just what a player does between the lines. It is what they represent culturally, emotionally, and commercially to the consumer who is deciding whether to spend their money. Wilson's excellence is undeniable inside the basketball world, but the basketball world and the broader consumer market are not the same thing. Clark's appeal has broken through into the mainstream in a way that Wilson's, despite everything she has accomplished, has not achieved at the same scale. That is not a statement about who is the better player. It is a statement about who is capturing a larger cultural moment right now. And right now, in this specific window of time, that player is Caitlin Clark. When Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year, Wilson publicly complained that it does not matter what we all do as black women. It boiled her blood. You've got to win one. Wilson's reaction to all of this is understandable. It is human. When you have given everything to a sport, when you have reached the highest levels of achievement in your profession, and when you watch the commercial rewards flow past you towards someone else, that stings. It does not matter how composed you are or how professional you are. It stings. But understanding why it happened does not make it easier. And for Wilson, the difficulty is compounded by the fact that the player receiving all of this attention is one she has had a complicated public relationship with for the past 2 years. This is where the story gets truly complicated, because the tension between A'ja Wilson and the narrative around Caitlin Clark did not begin with the shoe deal. It has been building publicly, visibly, and consistently for over 2 years. And that pattern, the documented, trackable record of Wilson's public responses to Clark's rising profile, is directly relevant to understanding Nike's business decision. Brands do not just look at sales numbers when they decide where to put their marketing energy. They look at the entire picture. They look at social media behavior, public statements, interview responses, and the overall narrative that surrounds their ambassadors. They want their athletes to be positive forces in the culture around their brand. Wilson's responses to Clark's accolades have created a different kind of narrative, not a villain narrative that is too simple and too unfair, but a complicated one that requires management, that generates controversy, that puts Nike in the position of having to navigate public perception every time Wilson comments on something Clark-related. That comment, it boiled her blood, that was memorable. It is the kind of quote that lives on the internet forever. And every time Wilson makes a comment like that, every time she publicly pushes back on a Clark achievement or accolade, the story becomes about the tension between them rather than about Wilson's own excellence. That is a brand problem. Not because Wilson is wrong to have opinions, not because her feelings are invalid, but because brands like Nike need their primary faces to be figures that bring people together rather than figures that generate division. And when one athlete is consistently generating heat around another athlete, especially an athlete the brand is also invested in, the The decision about where to redirect promotional energy becomes much cleaner. Wilson gave Nike an easier choice than she may have intended to, and the clearance rack is, in part, the result. Let's take a step back from the personal and talk about the structural, because what is happening between Wilson and Clark at Nike is not a unique situation. It is a version of something that has happened many times in the history of athlete endorsements. Brands are not buying players. They are buying stories. They are buying cultural moments. They are buying the feeling that consumers want to be connected to when they open their wallets and choose a product. The story of Caitlin Clark right now is one of the most compelling sports stories in American culture, not just in women's basketball. In sports, period. The ratings, the attendance, the merchandise, the organic adoption of her shoe by NBA players who have no financial incentive to wear it. All of that tells a story of genuine crossover appeal that transcends the sport itself. That crossover appeal is the holy grail for brands like Nike. It means Clark's shoe is not just being bought by WNBA fans. It is being bought by basketball fans broadly, by fashion consumers, by people who may never watch a game but who recognize the cultural moment and want to be part of it. Wilson's A1 has not achieved that kind of crossover adoption. It remains a WNBA-centric product in a market that Nike needs to expand. And in the strategic mathematics of a global brand managing multiple athlete relationships simultaneously, that reality drives decisions in ways that feel cold and clinical from the outside, but are entirely rational from the inside. The business reality is this: Nike is a publicly traded company that answers to shareholders. Their athlete investment decisions are driven by return on investment. Right now, the projected return on Clark is dramatically higher than the demonstrated return on Wilson, and that gap is showing up visibly and painfully in where the marketing dollars go. Here is the thing that gets lost in the sneaker conversation, in the social media posts, in the drama of clearance racks and campaign budgets. Here is the thing that actually matters most. A'ja Wilson's reaction, those 4 words, that public acknowledgement of frustration, tells us something profound about where the WNBA is right now as a league and as a cultural institution. For years, the conversation in women's basketball was dominated by a specific kind of frustration. Why doesn't anyone care? Why aren't the ratings there? Why aren't the brands investing? Why does the best women's basketball in the world play in half-empty arenas while the conversation happens somewhere else? That conversation has shifted dramatically. In the span of one rookie's arrival, the entire commercial landscape of the WNBA changed. The brands are here now. The cameras are here. The audience is here. The money is following. But, and this is the tension that Wilson's reaction captures perfectly, the money is not distributed evenly. The attention is not distributed evenly. The established stars, the players who carried this league through the years when nobody was paying attention, are watching a new arrival receive resources and recognition on a scale they never experienced. That frustration is real, and it deserves to be taken seriously rather than dismissed. Wilson is not wrong that she has done extraordinary things in this league. She is not wrong that her contributions deserve recognition and commercial reward. The frustration of watching someone else receive that reward at a scale she never experienced. Why did everyone forget about my shoe? That is legitimate, but here is the complicated truth. The growth that is bringing all of this attention and money to the WNBA is growth that benefits every player in the league. The bigger the audience, the bigger the commercial ecosystem, the more value flows to every player wearing a WNBA jersey. Clark's rise is not a zero-sum game, even when the shoe market makes it feel that way. The challenge for Wilson, for the league, and for the brands involved is finding a way to honor legacy while embracing the new energy that is driving expansion. That balance is hard. The clearance rack and the social media post suggest it is not being managed as well as it could be. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about what happens next. For Wilson, for Clark, for Nike, and for the WNBA at large. For Wilson, the path forward requires a recalibration, not of her game. That remains elite, but of her public relationship with the Clark narrative. Every time Wilson publicly reacts to something Clark-related, she is reinforcing a story that ultimately does not serve her. The story of Wilson versus Clark is a story that Clark wins commercially every time, because the market has already decided where its energy is. Wilson's story, her real story, the story of 4 MVPs and sustained excellence and genuine greatness, is one that deserves to be told on its own terms, not in reaction to someone else, not as a counterpoint or a complaint, as its own complete, powerful, self-contained narrative. For Nike, this moment is a reminder that how you manage existing relationships matters as much as how you build new ones. The way Wilson's A1 has been handled, the quiet fade to clearance, the absence of new marketing energy, sends a message to every athlete watching. It says, when something shinier comes along, We will move on without warning. That is a message that has long-term consequences for the brand's relationships with athletes. That question does not just deserve a business answer. It deserves a human answer. And brands that want long-term relationships with the athletes who build their credibility need to find a way to provide both. For the WNBA, this moment is growing pains. This is what it looks like when a league transitions from niche to mainstream. The inequalities of attention and commercial reward get exposed in ways they weren't when everything was smaller. The tensions that were manageable in a smaller ecosystem become very public in a bigger one. But the league is growing. The audience is here. The brands are investing. And the challenge now is making sure that growth lifts every player, not just the one who happened to arrive at the exact right moment to catch the wave. Nike made a choice, a loud one, a deliberate one, the kind of choice that sends a message not just to A'ja Wilson, but to every athlete in the WNBA watching how the brand directs its energy and where it puts its name. That contrast, every surface versus the discount rack, is not subtle. It is not accidental. It is a business decision made with full knowledge of what it communicates. And A'ja Wilson read that communication clearly. The frustration has been building for 2 years. The shoe deal is the latest chapter in a story that started with awards, continued through accolades, and has now landed in the most commercial, visible, undeniable place possible: the retail floor. You cannot argue with a clearance tag. You cannot spin a markdown shoe. The market has spoken. But here is what I want to leave you with. Here is the thing that gets lost when we focus on the drama and the social media posts and the clearance racks. A'ja Wilson is one of the greatest players in the history of this league. Full stop. 4 MVPs, a legacy that will outlast any single shoe deal, any single marketing campaign, any single cultural moment. The clearance rack does not change what she has accomplished on the court. Nike's decision does not rewrite her history. And Caitlin Clark is building something real, something that is genuinely expanding the audience for women's basketball in ways that will benefit every player in this league for years to come. The attention she is generating is not a threat to the WNBA's legacy. It is an extension of it. The tension between them, the shoe deal, the social media post, the public frustration, that is the sound of a league in transition, of a sport outgrowing its old commercial structures and finding new ones, of 2 extraordinary athletes existing in the same space at the same time, and both deserving more than the current ecosystem can perfectly distribute. The WNBA is bigger than it has ever been. The brands are paying attention. The audience is growing. And right now, in the middle of all of it, A'ja Wilson is asking a question that the whole industry needs to answer. Why did everyone forget about my shoe? The answer to that question will shape the next decade of women's basketball. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to know where you stand.